cut down to questions and concerns and some answers possibly to our questions. We want to engage the audience now to express, what their comments and questions are regarding this particular panel discussion. We're going to use at least 15 minutes to do so. So does anyone have any questions or comments? After which we will break for the fourth panel discussion.
I just have one quick comment on Sharon's.
Actually, there will be two comments, but I'll make them quick. The first one is Larry Holmes, who was the first secretary of our party, said, the way that people have to survive in the USA, today's world, it's amazing that anyone can get up in the morning. And we need to be patient with each other because the pressures are so great. We are all it's unbelievable the strength and persistence that we have. The other thing I want to say, the family is also a dialectic. It can transmit the worst parts of society. It can transmit the brutality, and children are treated as property. Even in the worst possible case, the parent has the right to own that child. But it can also be a source of strength and support and love. So those are my comments.
Chris?
That one won't make it.
Oh, that's it.
We got to switch, use the other microphone.
Okay. I wanted to make a couple comments about Sharon's great report. One of the goals of socialism is to liberate not only society as a whole, but to liberate individuals to be able to develop to their fullest potential, to have the education that they desire, to learn different things when it comes to arts and recreation and all types of things, which we don't have in this society. But in order to be, under capitalism, the individual really can't develop to their greatest potential unless you're rich, unless you can buy education, unless you can buy travel, unless you can buy all the things that you want and need. So really, it's socialism that will liberate all of humanity, but also individuals in terms of mental health. I recently heard a report on the radio that because of all the cutbacks, like you were describing, all the mental health facilities that have been shut down, etc., that now the greatest mental health care provider in the U.S. is the prison system. And with over 1.2 million prisoners in that system, then of course a lot of it is for profit, it's run by prison corporations, etc. You don't get health care. Mental health care is the worst of it. So that's what, instead of giving the help that people need in this society, it's throw you in prison, throw away the key.
Or execute.
That
guy in St. Louis.
Exactly, or execution. And another thing I wanted to raise is that, especially in Detroit, we see that so much of the working class has been atomized, and it's been purposeful. In the early 80s, late 70s and early 80s, when the auto companies started shutting down in Detroit and moving to the suburbs, it was because they didn't want black workers congregated in the city. But now more and more, not just the auto industry, but every type of industry is, it's sent offshore, or it's done somewhere else, or it's done by prisoners. people are atomized. And we've seen that in the foreclosure crisis, where we constantly blame the system and the banks for what has happened. But people feel individually ashamed. They feel like it's something that they have done wrong. And it prevents them from seeking, legal help to get their situation straightened out, and it prevents them from engaging in the struggle. When you're sitting home alone or in the street, on the street alone, and you feel that it's your fault because you couldn't succeed in this society. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that it's so hard to have mental health when you're in such a sick society. And the other, a week or so ago, after a branch meeting, I had to take Warren home because the freeway was shut down on one side. And I hadn't been down Warren Avenue in a long time. But one of my favorite places to pass by was still there. I mentioned this to Tasha the other day. There's a closed down mental health center on Warren called Positive Images Mental Health Center. And right next to Positive Images is a totally gutted, burnt down building with graffiti all over it, a boarded up business on the other side of the street, dozens of buildings just like this. How do you go to a counseling center called Positive Images when you live in a city that is so devastated? How are people supposed to feel like, well, just forget all that and try and get your head on straight, and everything is so tied together. So I really appreciated your comments because, mental health can only really happen under socialism.
Is it for David? He's speaking? Okay.
You gotta use the other microphone.
Okay.
What's wrong with it?
It's too short.
Take this.
Well, Debbie's right there.
Debbie's
I think-
on.
I think she
Okay.
can get it.
Jill, then this gentleman back here had hand up.
Okay, well, just a couple of things. On the mental health thing, there's no question that under capitalism, capitalism has created an environment where the most heinous crimes are committed by people who don't even have the personal or mental capacity to see their wrong, the wrongness of their deeds. This is what unleashed mental illness, is what unleashed a murderer to kill 21 little children and babies. But the sad part about it is that capitalism has done so much to deny that mental illness is racing across the country and causing so much havoc, and that they don't have a responsibility. They don't have to do anything about it. It's really terrible. And the other thing I'm going to say is that Brian made a very important comment. The ruling class has done everything that it can to really get a hold of the pension funds for public sector workers
Yes.
across the country. That's what they wanted when they came into Detroit in the first place.
Right.
They needed and wanted to get to this, and he's right. The amount of money, it is trillions of dollars, because the public sector in this country it's millions strong, and people have been putting their money away. And you know what they want to do? They want to take that money to Wall Street.
Yep.
They have raped and pillaged every corner of this society. And here it is, all this new money that they can exploit, steal, rob, etc. And then when it's all gone, well, the market wasn't good that day, and But in the meantime, they have destroyed the prospects for tens of thousands of people. So we have to do everything we can to not let this happen. Unfortunately, they used the very vehicle that they needed to get control of the pension fund here in Detroit, and that's what they did. The other thing is that we need to understand is another point of Brian's talk, is the assault on public education. The ruling class has decided some time ago, we don't need to educate workers anymore.
That's right, right.
This is a time of high tech.
Yes.
We need a few people who can push the buttons and know how to work all that crap. And the rest of you, well, I don't know. There's nothing we really don't have any need for you. So they have really destroyed the underpinnings of workers by really dismantling public education in this country. So, you know, there's nothing that they won't pollute, destroy, mess up, exploit, burn, kill. It's nothing they won't do. Nothing is beyond what they will do to maintain their profits and to maintain their control. So we have a huge job ahead of us. But we can't let go of the really important things. And we have to remind people that this is exactly what's happening. Public education is under assault. The interesting thing is, it is not just happening in this country. In all the capitalist countries, the same thing is going on. Public education is in crisis. You know, oh well, you know, these schools, they don't know how to run their business, so they lost money and we can't, that they're on their own. That kind of thing. So we're seeing this happening more and more. We have to respond to this because like the Cuban Revolution has shown, everybody has the right to be educated. They have the right to access for education and university and whatever. Because this is how you make the full and complete person. You offer that person the opportunity to achieve to his or her absolute, and they will give you back something in return for that. So, it's really incredible when you talk to people, they say, oh yeah, that's right, they are doing this and that. Well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? So, the work we got our work cut out for us, but at the same time, the ruling class, the capitalists are creating their own means for their destruction. So if we can put them two together, we can run them right into the ocean.
That's okay, I'm going to speak, so let me.
Thank you. I just want to add a little bit to what Debbie said with regards to public education and how we're in a position right now losing it. Here in Detroit, we have had state takeover and emergency managers in the schools since 1999.
Right.
There was a 3-year hiatus in the mid-2000s, but otherwise we've had emergency managers taking over. And they have steadily taken our schools, taken our teachers. We, in many cases, have the Teach for America bunch who have no background in education at all, have gone into classrooms, have no idea how to manage a classroom, and they will work for practically nothing. What they get in exchange is their student loans forgiven. So And now here in Detroit, what we're seeing with the current emergency, actually from 2009 with the first emergency manager, Robert Vaughn, was to take $10,000 from every teacher's pay. The second emergency manager took 10% of every teacher's pay. And now this third emergency manager, Jack Martin, just announced this week, he is taking another 10% from every teacher's pay. And in addition to that, they are raising the sizes of the classroom to 43 students per class. And every kindergarten will now have 100 students. It's, believe me, it's more than outrageous. Worse yet, the state superintendent has okayed this, because with the money they're saving, quote unquote, they will be able to pay the banks the colossal loans they've taken out. So Debbie was talking about saying we've reached a point where this is enough, and that's true. This current emergency manager's term is supposed to be up at the end of September. And we have a mayor who has nothing to do because the emergency manager has taken over all his duties. So what he wants now is to take over the schools when this emergency manager leaves. This should be our line, our point where we say no more. We want our own schools for our students, and we want to educate them without all the testing, without all the 10-year-old textbooks that are now out of date, and computers that don't work. We want the best for our children. So let's think about this. End of September.
Okay, Eric, in the back here, and then we're gonna move to our next segment, next panel discussion. And unless we want to extend it for another 5 minutes. It's up to you.
For some reason I can't.
He's-
You can. That's what I was saying, that's the long board, that's how it was before, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on something that Chris brought up about people who are, unemployed in the system or, forced into low-wage jobs. The biggest propaganda coup that this system has ever, put on us is the idea that it's your fault.
Right.
When the reality is the system can't survive without permanent built-in unemployment. It's got nothing to do with you. If it's not you, it's going to be somebody else. You know what I mean? And they've sabotaged the language that you even use to describe your own conditions. Because what are you if you make a lot of money in this society? You're successful. What's the opposite of being successful? You're a failure. You failed. You have failed. It's like, no, it's actually, the system has failed me, if you want to talk about individual experiences, And also the idea of mental health in the society. I mean, everybody remembers that comedian Dave Chappelle, right?
Yeah.
Had his own show for a couple of years, was making tons of money, was doing really well, and then he got up and he's like, just left and went to South Africa for a while, and people were like, Dave Chappelle is insane, But he was like, when he came back, He was like, no, Hollywood is insane. Everybody in Hollywood is completely insane because they believe that the stuff that they put on TV and the stuff that they put on movie screens actually reflects reality. That's insane. So if I was having mental issues when I was in Hollywood, that's a sign of my sanity. If I was not adjusting properly to the insanity around me, that's a sign of my sanity, you know? So.
All right, the dialectic.
Okay, this lady, she had something to say here, she didn't have her hand? I'll just say it. Okay, so who had their hand up here?
Martha.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I really thought all the panelists, all 5 talks were excellent. And they all kind of bring me back to a basic concept. And a few years back, I heard a speech, somebody referenced a survey of college students and things that they thought were in the Constitution. They were asked if from each according to their ability to each according to their needs was in the U.S. Constitution. And a majority of them thought that it was. It's not. It is absolutely not guaranteed under any capitalist constitution whatsoever. But the fact that people have this illusion tells me that most people feel that's sort of how life should be run. But we know that that phrase is the words of Karl Marx, and we're all Marxists. So if anybody wants to comment on what that means from the standpoint of the topics of their talks, we may not have time, but if anybody wants to, I'm throwing that out as a question.
I want to say a few things about education, as it wasn't really all that long ago that I was in school. I didn't graduate high school, first of all. I got a GED. I dropped out when I was a junior. Just someone mentioned about the books being 10 years old. I would have been class of, I don't even know because I wasn't there. I think 2012. Let's just say 2012 because I really something like that. I remember when I was in Algebra 1, which I didn't pass. I remember in the textbooks. I remember in particular there was a graph on there that was like listing the GDP of countries. It referenced the GDR actually in there, so it just goes to show you exactly how old the book was. Yeah, so after all, the GDR ceased to exist about 5 years before I was even born, so it goes pretty deep. My school, Redford Union High School, I guess it's probably not the worst school around, but it wasn't really that great either. I remember when I was, I think, in 7th grade or so, that's when they began putting cameras everywhere in the school to make sure that everything is, watched at all times. Racially, when I was there, it's about, I would say there was about 50% white, 50% black, very few in, anything else really. But as it became less white and more black, and Joe's not here anymore, but he still goes to that school. As it's become less white and more black, the more emphasis that they place on security and sort of trying to create a prison-like atmosphere in the school. Like I remember while I was a junior, or maybe it was when I was a sophomore, it's when they hired some ex-cops to be security guards. And as I was going there, like at first there was these ex-cops, there were like three women, and then they hired this big guy who I thought was pretty big. And then right as I left, the guy that they hired was all those people, an even bigger guy who was an ex-Redford cop, and he's a giant bastard. He's a big guy, and he was notorious among like my mom knew him when she was young as like just a big asshole who just it was homicitis, and it sounds like a disease. Yeah. And yeah, Joe's mentioned to me before about how at certain points, even to go to the bathroom, you'd require some sort of chaperone to walk you through the hallway. Continuously, there would be, drills for lockdowns and things like that, where, we basically, I would find out, second period, that there's a lockdown drill. So basically what that would mean is the lights go off, we kind of miss the next period, and meanwhile there'd be one of those like dogs and stuff, doing their drills, looking for stuff, those bomb-seeking robots, going through on the treads. It doesn't even, and now that sounds really bad, but like I said before, I said it wasn't that bad, but really that's relatively speaking, because it's not as if I had to walk through a metal detector while I was there. Well, I was about to say that we didn't have a cop, but we did actually have a cop there at all times who was in uniform. I didn't really care, really. I mean, I didn't really care about school in general, so I didn't really care, oh man, my school is turning into something undesirable. I mean, like I said, I dropped out when I was a junior, so it wasn't really a big thing for me. But yeah, I guess I'm kind of rambling on now, but that's about it.
You're right. What was the guy's name again?
Thomas Itis.
Is he still there?
Yeah.
I don't know if you have time for one more, but.
I have time for two.
Okay.
One of the things that I've seen in Wisconsin is an attack on students' rights, and particularly in the universities. The generation before me, in the 70s, fought to get student power at the universities, fought to get what we call 36095. It's written into our state statutes, basically saying that the students have an equal right with the administrators and with the professors and other faculty to run the university. And that has been eroded slightly over the years, and at this point, to a large extent, just done away with. The administration at UWM, the University of Wisconsin, particularly University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, is where I've seen it, has thrown out student government. The students fought that. They did a petition to try to get it back. The administration wouldn't even recognize it. And that controls a lot of the funding at the university, that controls a lot of the appointments at the university. It controls a lot. And it really determines a lot of what happens at a university. And whereas the UW system was once a kind of something to be emulated across the country in varying degrees, and now it is, I suppose, in some senses, something to be emulated if you want to take away students' rights, and that would be horrible. So I hope that isn't happening. I fear it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Leroy, then Debbie, and then we have to move on.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
I want to comment on that gentleman's wise remark about the system fails us as opposed to we're failing the system in regard to unemployment. The state of Michigan is currently circulating a questionnaire to unemployed people asking along the lines of, is it your fault you are not working? Well, yeah, that's defective, but yeah. What is the matter with you? Why are you not working? Are you in class? Are you sick? Are you too disabled? Are you refusing to relocate?
Right.
Are you refusing to accept pay in the normal area for your occupation? That kind of limitations. What's wrong with you that you are not working? And I thought it was particularly hilarious that I received that questionnaire, because if anybody had had a brain over there, when a person is approaching 70, and they're already, it's gonna be hard in this economy. Well, I'm a seasonal person, so I'm not complaining, but I mean, if you were getting that in your 25 or whatever, or any age, that's gonna be very serious, because the threat is, if you don't answer this and explain what is wrong with you, they're cutting you off of your unemployment.
Right.
So therefore, you must explain what's wrong with you and tell you up. That's how bad it's gotten.
Okay, you're
Well,
right.
I listen to your mother.
Very clean underwear.
I just wanted to share something, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. But if you aren't, let me ask you this. Did you know that all of the textbooks used in all of the public schools across the United States are put together, its contents determined, and, history covered, that all of this takes place in, excuse me, the fucking state of Texas. Did you know that? That's right.
Yeah.
Texas.
Is that purchase or?
The fascist land of America is the place that puts out the public, all the books used in all the public schools across this country. And, when my older son, who was in high school in the 1980s, when he was going to school, I one day picked up his history book. And in that history book, slavery and the Civil War was covered in 2.5 pages in this history. I kid you not. I kept going through to see, well, maybe I just, maybe it just, but it must be someplace else. No. It infuriated me. I was absolutely wild. I could not believe it. And I said, this is what they did. What did they do? I actually almost went off of my son because I couldn't believe. Well, no, that's the book. It's, I didn't write it or something. He said something like that, and you're right. But then, until years later, this is when I find out this whole thing about who pulls together and directs the production of public school books. History, language, everything. In Texas. Honey, we gotta have a revolution. Because there's no way in the world that this criminal act should be allowed to continue.
Victor writes
Okay, Brian.
the story. And when we win, we're gonna rewrite those books. It will be the victor.
That's a great headline for the next paper. Honey, we need a revolution. I like it. I just want to say that one of the things I forgot to mention was that the other criminal thing that's happening in education is student loan debt. It's $1.2 trillion right now, and that's another way that the banks, generations of students are shackled to student loan debt. The other thing I wanted to just mention real quick is we are involved in North Carolina and Virginia, some of our comrades. There's a formation called the Southern Workers Assembly, and we just wanted to raise that in solidarity with them. That, previously in U.S. history, the North came to the South in textile mills and all of this. These days, the South is coming to the North.
Right.
I have the interesting opportunity now to be working down in Virginia, and it's illegal to have collective bargaining contract. Illegal. Supreme Court decision in Virginia. Illegal. Can't bargain contracts. And in North Carolina. Came right out of Jim Crow, passed in the 1950s. All of these statutes written in the 1950s, most of them right after Taft-Hartley. And now you see what's happening in Michigan, right to work, Indiana, right to work, Wisconsin, and some of these right-wing servants sometimes forget themselves and actually say things like, we want Wisconsin and the Midwest to look like the South. So there's a lot of solidarity, I think, that can be happen. And I just wanted to raise something, because I've been down there doing some reading, and there's comments in the room who, I'm happy to be in coal country right now. In 1989, there was a strike in Pittston. the Pittston strike. And the kind of solidarity that we need is the kind that happened then. There was a 400-car caravan that came down from Detroit to Pittston. And, you know, instead of abandoning the South like Labor did in the 1940s by suspending Operation Dixie, that's the kind of thing that we need to see today. So I just wanted to raise that, you know, being in solidarity with Southern Workers Assembly and uniting the workers in the South and the North and all across the country.
Okay, so